CDs that are movies that the defendant's counsel requested to play to the jury. Reading from Defendant's Exhibit 111, it is the talented Mr. Ripley, quote, a mesmerizing masterpiece of the unexpected. Matt Damon, Gwendolyn Paltrow, Jude Law, Cate Blanchett. It's described as the following. A scenic, voluptuously beautiful film with a traffic-stopping cast. Matt Damon, Gwendolyn Paltrow, Jude Law, and Cate Blanchett electrify the screen in this riveting thriller from Oscar-winning director Anthony Minghella, The English Patient. Matt Damon gives one of the year's most extraordinary performances as Tom Ripley, a calculating young man who believes his brother to be a fake, in the form of a wealthy American shipbuilder who hires Tom to travel to Italy to bring back his playboy son Dickie for his law his past. The idyllic lives of Dickie and his girlfriend comes into a darling scheme of duplicity, lies, and murder. As this has been described, it would appear that Mr. Ripley goes to another continent, kills a man, assumes his identity, and becomes an imposter to obtain his fortune. As I contemplated last evening, and he did so on a matter in which he's clearly a deceptive, manipulative killer. As I contemplated last evening, there are thousands of Hollywood movies in which characters are deceptive, manipulated killers, and this film has no parallel to this case other than that. Grant Hayes did not kill anyone to obtain their identity and then attempt to become an imposter to acquire their fortune. There's no factual connection between this case and this film that I can see, except character flaws in, from the testimony, character flaws in Grant Hayes that are similar to character flaws in the Ripley character. But the film itself and the story itself and the storyline itself has no parallel to this trial whatsoever. In view of that, most of the viewing of this film would be entirely information that would be incompetent, would be irrelevant, would to some extent be confusing, and would be of no probative value in the trial of this case. However, since there are parallels between the character of Mr. Ripley and the character of Grant Hayes, then I will certainly allow anyone to be called as a witness to testify who's seen the film to point out those similarities. But to play the film, again, I find that would not be probative or useful in its in the manner in which the defendant requests. With regard to Defendant's Exhibit 110, the Stepford wives, Roger Ebert said thumbs up. Nicole Kidman, Matthew Broderick, Beth Midler, Christopher Walken, Faith Hill, and Glenn Close. And this is Hollywood. Both of these films are Hollywood. These are not true stories. These are contrived stories of Hollywood. The reviews say, Gene Shalit said, The Stepford Wives is a horror picture that will have you screaming with laughter. It's wickedly funny. Newsweek said, I laughed my way through The Stepford Wives. Joel Siegel said, it's a flat-out comedy, funny. There's nothing funny about the case that we're trying before this courtroom, which involved an alleged victim that was horribly victimized before and after her death. I find nothing probative with regard to the Stepford Wives, and therefore the objection is sustained as to that. I believe that the presentation of that would constitute incompetent information of no probative value, and the objection is sustained. However, to the extent that anyone has seen that movie and sees some parallel between what a Stepford wife was depicted in the movie and any conduct of Grant Hayes that suggested that he wanted to create women or manipulate women to have them become Stepford wives, and certainly will allow the jury to hear that by any such testimony. All right, ask the jury to come in. Sure.
Mr. Palmer has available to him a summary of both the County Mississippi and the Stepford Wives, which I would like for him to have available or to testify in the court to refer to the court to read.
Can I see it? Sure.
Orange County, $1 million.
Do you have a copy for them? How is how do you intend to use this information?
My preference is to have Mr. Palmer read.
Okay. Is this something that he created or something that you created, and you're simply going to ask him whether or not he agrees with it as a good summary of the movie?
It's something that I created, that I have had him review for detail to be sure that it's accurate.
Okay.
Or just showing the movie, except that it's more efficient. But these represent what I believe they're written by Mr. Gaskins. There's subjective statements in here that indicate that they're Mr. Gaskins' opinions. And I don't understand how Mr. Palmer can, I mean, I guess Mr. Palmer can testify to Mr. Gaskins' opinions, but I think it needs to be clear who wrote this. I would object to
Well, I guess you can ask him if I let it in.
Yeah.
Who wrote it? And
that's correct. So I would object on those grounds that this is hearsay that's not relevant to the case. I believe the court's ruling was that Mr. Palmer could testify to the similarities in these movies between Grant Hayes, I guess, and the Ripley character, but that's not what this is.
I understand that, but I mean, this is a unique case in which the victim, in her own information about herself and about Grant Hayes, made some reference to, as I recall, Mr. Hayes being like Mr. Ripley in the movie, and also some reference to the Stepford wives. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the parenting statement.
That's correct.
Okay,
She
well,
made those, but I just think that your ruling earlier that to the extent it's relevant to show that there were any parallels is different than allowing basically a summary that's been written by Mr. Gaskins in terms of, I mean, this is argument. I mean, is the witness going to get up there and say?
the witness apparently is going to get up there and read this.
Well,
Read
the
this.
The state would object.
I know you do. You've objected several times. I haven't told you how to try your case, and I'm not going to tell him how to try his case. The state's evidence tends to show that the victim made reference to Grant Hayes as a person like Mr. Ripley in the movie. The defendant was requested the opportunity to at least describe Mr. Ripley in some way by competent evidence as depicted in the movie, as well as the Stepford wives as depicted in the movie. We're not going to watch the movie, but in my discretion, I'll allow them to offer evidence in this manner if they deem it in their best interest in their defense, and therefore your objection is overruled. I will offer the presentation of this information to this jury in this manner over the objection of the state. All right?
Your Honor, I have prepared a copy of these exhibits for each of the jurors to have in their possession as Mr. Palmer testified.
Fine. Fine. Mark it as an exhibit, and we'll go forward.
I have marked the calendar Mr. Ripley as Exhibit 111A.
Okay.
And the Stepford wives as 110A. I have not yet marked the copy for the jurors. Do you want me to do so?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
Do I have an extra copy?
Yes, you do.
All right. Just give me the bailiff and we'll. Okay, I've got the copy that you gave me. Okay. I have got a copy of both of them. Thank you.
On a separate issue, Your Honor, again, there are copies made for the jurors today, but we weren't provided this pursuant to 15A-905. I would just again ask that if there's any pictures or any documents that the defendant intends to introduce that we would be provided those, because.
Well, I think probably at the court's ruling last evening and might have sought, in view of my ruling, an alternative method of presentation of this information. But if you have any additional documents that you intend to offer, photographs you intend to offer, the state's entitled to see them, so please timely provide those, if you would.
We have no other documents concerning these exhibits. We do have some documents that will come in later that we have copied for them, and we'll deliver those. Ms. Collins,
I provided what I believe they did not have previously, which were appraisals of some jewelry
Okay.
that we came into possession of. And I've made an extra copy of all the financial records just in case. I think we gave you a tremendous amount of those earlier in the case, but just in case, I got another copy.
And I guess I'm just concerned with any photographs for this witness, like happened yesterday afternoon. That's
Okay. All right.
If I may pass, I have a chart that we intend to use once we finish this part, which I have previously.
Yeah, we got it.
All right. Good. Thank you. All right. Sheriff, can you bring the jury in, please? We're in session now. Good morning, folks. I apologize for the delay in starting this morning, but we've been in session since 9:30, and we've been discussing the defendant's request for the court to allow the jury to view in its entirety two movies. One of them, Defendant's Exhibit 111, The Talented Mr. Ripley, and Defendant's Exhibit number 110, The Stepford Wives. I have sustained the state's objection to the defendant's request to show the jury these entire movies from beginning to end. However, I have overruled the state's objection, and I will allow the defendant through counsel in the examination of a witness to allow the witness to describe a summary of these movies. To the extent that you find it relevant, to the extent that you find it probative on any issue in this case, then you will have that summary to consider. But we will not play 4 hours of these movies in this courtroom. And that's the court's ruling. Mr. Palmer, come on back. Up, please. Just take your seat, please, sir. Mr. Gaskins, upon that ruling by the court, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Palmer, if you will examine Defendant's Exhibit number 111A, let me ask you if you recognize that exhibit.
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That's the summary of the CD that I've already reviewed, The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Let me ask you also if you will, to examine what I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit 110A and ask you if you can identify that exhibit.
Yes. The Stepford Wives is another film that I have already reviewed.
Your Honor, at this time we'll ask that the jury be provided with copies of the summary, first of The Talented Mr. Ripley, or of both, if it's more convenient to do so at one time.
Mr. Palmer, do you believe that this is an accurate description of those two films?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. The objection is overruled. I assume you moved the admission of NA and evidence. You moved their admission? Okay. That'll be received. Sheriff, you may publish. Which one do you want to do first?
Let's do The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Okay. Can you do 111A, which is The Talented Mr. Ripley, first? I don't think that number is actually on the document, ladies and gentlemen, but it is Defendant's Exhibit 111A. All right, I think these jurors all have the exhibits. You may proceed with your questions.
Mr. Palmer, if you would you read to the jury the exhibit, The Talented Mr. Ripley? I believe it's Defendant's Exhibit 111A.
Correct.
Would you
talented Mr. Ripley. Tom Ripley is a young sociopath struggling to make a living in New York City by whatever means necessary, including a series of small-time confidence scams. He has a part-time job helping service patrons in a business bathroom. He is also proficient in playing the piano. One of his friends, who really a student at Princeton, is scheduled to play a piano at an event sponsored by a shipping magnate, Herbert Greenleaf. The friend, however, has hurt his hand and cannot play the piano that particular day. He asked Ripley to take his place at the event since Ripley plays the piano very well himself. Tom Ripley borrows his friend's Princeton jacket to wear to the event so that will appear that he is his friend from Princeton. Herbert Greenleaf spots Ripley at the event and sees that he is wearing Princeton jacket. He asks Ripley if he ever knew his own son, Dickie, who had also attended Princeton. Ripley is taken aback at front because he doesn't realize he is wearing the Princeton jacket that his friend had loaned to him. He realizes that Herbert Greenleaf is looking at his Princeton jacket and responds, "Yes, I knew Dickie." Herbert Greenleaf then tells Ripley that his son has gone to Italy as a playboy and that he wants him to return to the United States to work in the family shipping business. He tells Ripley that he will pay him $1,000 if he will go to Italy and convince Dickie to come back home to the United States to work in the family shipping business. Ripley agrees to the trip to Italy. He goes to the town where Dickie is living in Italy and conducts surveillance of him until he understands everything about him. He watches Dickie while he is with his girlfriend, Margaret Sherwood. He watches while Dickie sails on his sailboat named Bird. The sailboat is named after jazz musician Andrew Bird. Ripley quickly learns to become proficient in jazz so that he can impress Dickie. Ripley then arranges to accidentally run into Dickie and Marge on the beach. He pretends that he has known Dickie from Princeton and convinces Dickie that they had in fact been friends when they attended Princeton together. Ripley had never even met Dickie, but Ripley convinces Dickie that they were old friends. Dickie ingratiates himself with Dickie, but Dickie's girlfriend Marge doesn't seem to like him very much. As Ripley and Dickie spends more and more time together, Marge feels left out and becomes insinuating that Dickie and Ripley is gay. Dickie then unexpectedly finds Ripley in his bedroom dressed up in his clothing and imitating his mannerism. He can even imitate Dickie's father, Herbert Greenleaf's voice. He shocks Dickie by saying things that Dickie's father had said, and his voice sounds like Dickie's father. His imitation of Dickie's father is perfect. Dickie starts to tire of Ripley's constant companionship, and Ripley senses that his wealthy friend has begun to tire of him, resenting his constant presence and growing personal dependence. Ripley has indeed become obsessed with Dickie, which is further reinforced by the desire to imitate and maintain the wealthy lifestyle that Dickie has afforded him. As a gesture to Ripley, Dickie agrees to travel with him on a short vacation to a vacation spot in Italy. Sensing that Dickie is about to cut him loose, Ripley finally decides to kill Dickie and assume his identity. When the two set sail in a small rented boat, Ripley beats Dickie to death with an oar, dumps his anchored Wade body into the water, and sinks the boat. Ripley then assumes Dickie's identity, living off Dickie's trust fund and carefully providing communications to Dickie's girlfriend, Marge, to assure her that Dickie has dumped her. Freddie Miles is an old friend of Dickie's from the same social class. He encounters Ripley at what he supposes to be Dickie's apartment in Rome. Freddie soon suspects something is wrong. When Freddie finally confronts Ripley, Ripley kills him with an ashtray. He later disposes of Freddie's body outside Rome in an attempt to make the police believe that Freddie had been killed by robbers after Freddie's body was found. The Italian police have in the meantime also found the boat that Dickie had rented after it was washed up on shore, but they never found Dickie's body. They know, however, that Dickie rented the boat. Ripley creates a deception scheme to conceal what he has done from the Italian police. He manages to keep himself safe to restore his own identity and moving to Venice. When Dickie's girlfriend Marge Herbert Greenlee, when Dickie's girlfriend Marge Herbert Greenlee and Dickie's father and a private investigator confront Ripley, Ripley suggests to them that Dickie has been depressed and may have committed suicide. Herbert Greenlee decides that he will give Ripley the inheritance that belongs to Dickie because Ripley was so good to Dickie. Marge, Marge stays for a while at Ripley's rented home in Venice, and she then discovers Dickie's rings in Ripley's possession. Marge seems to be on the verge of revealing the truth about Ripley, what Ripley has done, when she realizes that Ripley has probably killed Dickie. When Ripley realizes that when Ripley contemplates killing Marge, but she is saved when she's, I'm sorry, let me read that again. Marge seems to be on the verge of revealing the truth of what Dickie has done when she realizes that Ripley has probably killed Dickie. When Ripley contemplates killing Marge, but she is saved when he convinces her that if Dickie gave his rings to Ripley, then Dickie must have really probably meant to kill himself. Dickie's friend Peter then moves in with Ripley in Venice. Ripley knows that Pete is really Tom Ripley. He has managed to lie and deceive everyone else. He has fooled Marge, Peter, Dickie's father, Herbert Greenlee, and the private detective from America, who also believes that he is really Ripley and was Dickie's best friend. Ripley and Peter then decides that they will travel to Greece together. Ripley thinks that he has fooled everyone and escaped. He has inherited Dickie's fortune, and he's convinced Marge that he didn't kill Dickie. She now believes that Dickie must have committed suicide. Ripley and Peter are on a ship to Greece when Ripley encounters another female acquaintance who is a family member of a prestigious Loeb family. She's traveled under the assumed name of Meredith Randall in order to avoid publicity. She believes that Ripley is really Dickie. Ripley knows that he can't allow her to reveal that he is pretending to be Dickie. He has to somehow keep her from revealing what he has done. Ripley contemplates throwing his female acquaintance off the stern of the ship. His plan is interrupted when her family walks up. Ripley realizes that he can't kill his female acquaintance to conceal his deception. His female acquaintance has to go on believing that he is really Dickie if he is going to maintain his charade. Ripley returns to the cabin that he shares with Peter on the ship. He knows that Peter knows that he is really Ripley and that the female acquaintance actually believes that he is Dickie. He walks into the cabin that he shares with Peter and discreetly takes his scarf off. He walks through the cabin door. The audience knows that he is about to choke Peter to death with his scarf. Dickie sits on the bed with Peter. He slips the scarf out. It is apparent that he's going to choke Peter at this moment, or at that moment. The final scene shows that Dickie in the ship's cabin by himself. Peter is gone. Ripley has choked Peter and thrown him overboard. He continues on his trip to Greece. His own female acquaintance still believes that he is Dickie. Now he has become Dickie again for the remainder of the trip. There is no one left to reveal to anyone that he is really Ripley. Ripley has managed to lie and deceive everyone with whom he has come in contact. He has managed to lead some people to believe that he is Tom Ripley and others to believe that he is actually Dickie. He has successfully controlled, manipulated, and deceived everyone with whom he has come in contact. He has killed everyone who has gotten in his way except Marge. She has, however, finally figured out that he has probably killed Dickie, but now he has disappeared in Greece. He has now become Dickie. Tom Ripley is no longer exist. Marge returns to America, and Tom Ripley has become Dickie.
All right.
Now, if you would refer to Exhibit 110, if we could.
Sheriff, can you publish that, please?
You had that
Yes.
exhibit before you,
Yes.
would you read that to us?
The Stepford Wives. The Stepford Wives is a 2004 American science fiction film. It stars Nicole Kidman, Matthew Broderick, Bette Midler, Christopher Walken, Faith Hill, and Glenn Close. The film is a remake of the 1975 film of the same name. Jonah Eberhardt, played by Nicole Kidman, is a successful realty television executive. She is fired after her latest project. She moves with her husband Walter, played by Matthew Broderick, and their two children from Manhattan to Stepford, a quiet Connecticut suburb. Joanna becomes friends with Bobby Markowitz, played by Bette Midler, a writer and recovering alcoholic, and Roger Bannister, played by Roger Bart, a flamboyant gay man who has moved to town with his longtime partner, Jerry, played by David Marshall Grant. Jonah, Bobby, and Roger witnessed an incident in which Sarah Sunderson, played by Faith Hill, violently dances and then collapses. a man named Mike played by Christopher Walken arrived and directs all the men to crowd around Sarah so that no one can see what she's going through. Although Jonah sees Mike touch Sarah, and she puts off sparks. After Sarah has carried away Claire, played by Glenn Close, the town's leading lady, announces to Jonah that Mike essentially runs Stepford and says that she's his wife. Jonah argues with Walter about the incident with Sarah until Walter loses his temper and yells at her. He tells her that her children barely know her and that their marriage is falling apart and that she is so domineering people want to kill her. Realizing how unhappy she is, Jonah apologizes and agrees to try to fit in with the other wives. Then next, as she cleans the house and tries wearing more makeup, she talks with Bobby and Roger, and they decide to visit Sarah. Entering the home, they hear Sarah having loud, passionate sex with her husband. Roger starts tiptoeing up the stairs to have a peek, and the woman follows until they hear someone suddenly coming into the room. They quickly return downstairs to hide, and they find a remote control labeled Sarah. While playing with it, they inadvertently cause Sarah's breast to enlarge before she falls on the staircase behind them. Frightened, they retreated to Bobby's house, where Jonah suggests that they seriously try to live in Stepford. During that time, the Stepford women appear extremely shallow. They are in the Stepford Book Club. Their story is a catalog of Christmas collectibles and decoration tips. Meanwhile, Walter has been bonding with Stepford Men's Association. When he wins $20 in a game from Ted, one of the Stepford husbands. Ted summons his wife to put a credit card in her mouth. She spits out $20 in $1 bills, revealing that she is a robot like the other women. One evening, Walter and Mr. Markowitz go to the Men's Association with Roger and Jerry, but Jonah and Bobby hire a babysitter and follow them. Sneaking around the Men's Association, they find a long line of family portraits. They make a noise and Robert is sent out to see what is going on. Although he does not reveal their presence to the other men, he tells Jonah and Bobby that nothing illegal is going on there, and Jonah and Bobby leave. Roger is directed to the door, and he has found himself on the balcony overlooking the main hall. Looking down, he sees something puzzling, turns to the camera, and softly utters, "Jerry." The next day, he completely is transformed, running for the state senate as a conservative gay Republican. Terrified, Jonah tells Walter that she wants to move. Walter apologizes, saying that if she is so miserable, they can leave tomorrow. She thanks him. That night, she awakens by their robotic dog, bringing her a bone. She is horrified to find that it's actually a remote control, like Sarah, but labeled Jonah. She goes online to research the women of Stepford and learns that she used to be a scientist, engineers, and judges. Next morning, she turns to see Bobby, only to find out that she too has become fawning and stupid. Jonah realizes that Bobby isn't human anymore, and Bobby falls to react to the open flame of a lit stove. Jonah tries to flee and finds that her children have been taken hostage by the men. The storms in the men's club demanding that the men return her children, but the men who had been lying in wait for her captured her. The men explained that when their wives were scientists and engineers, their wives reduced them to low-level support roles. Enraged, the men implanted microchips into their wives' brains and then transplant their minds into clone bodies, which became the men's patient, subservient, and impossible beautiful robot mistresses. As Mike reveals Jonah's new body, Walter's voice is frustrating at being the second best to her. The men corner Jonah and Walter and force them forward and The men corner Jonah and Walter and force them towards the transformation room. But before Jonah enters, she makes a final appeal by asking whether the new wives really mean to make them final. The men corner Jonah and Walter and force them towards the transformation room. But before Jonah enters, she makes a final appeal by asking whether the new wives really mean it when they tell their husbands that they love them. Later, Jonah appears at a grocery store, calmly purchasing groceries alongside the other wives. With Jonah and Walter as a guest of honor, Stepford hosts final ball. During the festivities, Jonah distracts Mike and entices him into the garden while Walter slips away. Walter returns to the transformation room where he destroys the software that makes the wives obedient. This in turn burns out all the implanted microchips, causing all the Stepford wives to revert to their original personalities. Walter returns to the ball where the baffled husbands are cornered by their vengeful wives. Walter reveals that Jonah never received the microchip implant. Her argument during the struggle had won them over, and out of his love for the loyalty to the human being he married, he joined her plan to infiltrate Stepford by pretending to be a robot. Mike threatens Walter, but before Mike can attack Jonah, hits Mike with a candlestick, decapitating him and revealing that he himself is a robot. It is revealed that his wife Clara is a real woman and not a Stepford wife, as implied. Distraught over the loss of her husband, Clara explains that she created Stepford because she too was a bitter, career-minded woman who a tired brain surgeon. When she discovered that Mike was having an affair, she killed Mike and his lover in a jealous rage. Deciding to make the world more beautiful, she created her robot husband, partly because he was someone other men would listen to. When Jonah wondered why Clara didn't simply make the men into robots, she replied that she planned to turn the whole community into robots. Clara then electrocutes herself by kissing Mike's severe robotic head. 6 months later, Larry King is interviewing Jonah, Bobby, and Roger. After their experiences in Stepford, they have all met with success. Jonah made a documentary, Bobby wrote a book of poetry. Roger won his state Senate seat as an independent. Jonah also noted that while her and Walter's relationship wasn't perfect, it is still real, and that is what is important. The closing scene of the film reveals that the irate wives had taken over Stedford and forced their husbands to atone to their crimes by placing them under house arrest, making them complete many of the same domestic tasks that they've forced the women to do.
All right, go ahead.
May I approach witness, Your Honor?
Sure.
Mr. Palmer, let me, if I may, ask you to examine what I've marked as Appendix Exhibit 132 and ask you if you can identify that.
Yeah, excuse me. That's a travel log.
Is that the travel log that you compiled after you drove the Dodge Durango to the various different spots that you talked about yesterday?
Yes, that's correct.
I'd offer that into evidence, Your Honor,
What do we receive?
and ask to publish it on the screen.
You may.
Mr. Palmer, you were asked as part of your responsibilities in this case to track the Dodge Durango from July 14, 2011 at midnight until July 16, 2011 at midnight, were you not?
Objection.
Sustained, I don't understand the question.
Were you asked to retrace the trail that the Dodge Durango had followed beginning at midnight on July 14th, 2011 until midnight, July the 16th, 2011?
Objection.
Well, overall, if he was asked to do that,
Now, you were not asked to do that back in 2011, were you?
No, I had no involvement in this case in 2011.
You were asked to do the tracking in December 14th, no, December 15th, December 14th and 15th, 2013, correct?
That is correct.
And you were asked to do that tracking based on the information that was available to you.
Objection.
well, are you asking, was he asked to drive to various locations
Yes, were you asked to drive to the different locations?
Yes, that's correct.
overall?
Were you asked to keep track of the number of miles that it was from one location to another?
Yes,
Did you do that by tracking the mileage on the speedometer of the Dodge Durango?
yes, that's correct.
And where were you when you first received possession of the Dodge Durango?
I took control of that vehicle at your residence.
And where did you drive it to?
I drove it first to the BP station at Glenwood Avenue.
And at the BP station, did you fill it with gas?
Yes, I did. I added about 6.45 gallons of gas to that which was already in the gas tank when I took it over.
And did that fill the gas tank?
Yes,
Now, you testified yesterday that you used $3.45 per gallon as your gauge.
I'm sorry, say that again?
you used the price of $3.45 per gallon as the price of gas in July of 2011. Is that correct?
Yes.
So your chart on line 2, line 1 indicates that you put 8.45 gallons of gas in that vehicle at that time, correct?
Yes.
And did that fill the vehicle with gas?
At that time it did.
Where did you then drive it to?
To the Black Flower located at West Peace Street.
How many miles was that?
That was 8 miles.
Go back up to the first line. I think you're on the second line.
Okay. From 6501 Glenwood Avenue, added 8.45 gallons. And at 112, that's July 14th. We're talking about.
You then drove it to the Black Flower, correct?
Yes.
Now that was 7 miles. Do you see that on the first line?
Yes.
From the Black Flower, where did you drive it?
To the Black Flower, back to the residence at 4021 Bella Park Trail.
How many miles was that?
That's 8 miles.
And from Bella Park Trail, where did you drive it?
To the Walmart at 1050 Glenwood Avenue.
And from there, where did you drive it?
From that location to 1505 Holman Street in Kinston,
How many miles was that?
105 miles.
And in Kinston, did you then review those rental properties that you displayed to the jury yesterday?
Yes.
Objection, Howard. Characterize that.
Have you moved to another subject?
Sorry.
I didn't understand.
Did you take photographs of those houses that we saw yesterday?
In Kinston, yes.
All right, go ahead.
And from, after doing that, did you drive to the RBC Centura Bank in Kinston at Plaza Boulevard?
Correct. 2 miles.
And then back to Raleigh?
Yes.
How far was it back to Raleigh?
That's 90 miles.
And from, when you got back to Raleigh, where'd you go?
To the Target.
And from the Target, where'd you go?
4841 Barton's Road, back to the apartment complex.
And skipping on down through the short little trips here, you were driving to various spots in Raleigh, were you not?
Correct.
And then after you, well, let me go back up to the last line before you get to July 15th. You see that?
The Kangaroo you're speaking of?
The Kangaroo. Actually, the line before that.
Apple at Crabtree?
Yes. Do you see that there was 12.05 gallons of gas?
Yes.
That's the gasoline that was put into the Dodge Durango on July the 14th. Is that correct?
Objection.
What year? What are you talking about?
Do you recall that when the Dodge Durango was at the Kangaroo station on July the 15th, that there was $41.58 worth of gas put in the vehicle?
Did you recall that from what?
Do you recall that from the spreadsheet we reviewed?
Review, yes.
using the price of $3.45 a gallon, how many gallons of gasoline was put into Dodge Durango at that stop?
Are you talking about, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused here. Go back.
Do you see the second to the last line on the chart
Yes.
before you get to July 5th? How much gasoline does the chart indicate was put into the vehicle on July 14th at the Kangaroo Station?
At the Kangaroo Station, 12.05 gallons. That's what you're talking about.
Now, you're computing that information based on the information that was available to you from the spread chart.
Yes.
The next day, July 15th, did you continue, well, you didn't have the vehicle on July 15th. You were duplicating what had happened on July 15th, correct?
Correct.
When you duplicated what had happened on Friday, July 15th, did you include a trip to Wilson, to the sheet station in Wilson, and then back to Raleigh?
Yes, I did.
And how far was it to the sheet station?
63 miles.
And then you came back another
63 miles return.
Now, going on down that list on referring to what you duplicated from July 15th, did you include a trip from the Fiddlesticks on Glenwood Avenue to Kinston?
Yes, 1505 Holloman Street in Kinston, North Carolina.
And how many miles was that?
That's 88 miles.
And then the following morning,
Jamie, can you put the, just went away.
following, I'm sorry,
Okay, all right.
did you, from Kinston, did you then drive back to the Walmart at Briar Creek after you had been to Kinston?
Yes,
And how many miles was that?
94 miles.
And once you got back from Kinston, did you then go to the various different spots that had been identified on the receipts and the cash purchases that were displayed on the spreadsheet from July 16th?
Yes, I did.
Once you added all of those miles together, how many miles had you traveled?
The total miles was 597.34 miles.
And how much gas did you have to put in the Dodge Durango during the period that you were driving it in order to drive that many miles? You put approximately 31 gallons of gas in it.
At the close of the trip,
At the close of the trip, had you used approximately 31 gallons of gas to drive those miles?
yes,
And at the conclusion of the trip, was the Dodge Durango filled with gas in order to return it to the Raleigh Police Department with a full tank?
yes it was. However, I didn't return it.
I'm sorry,
However, I did not return the vehicle to law enforcement agency.
I returned it, didn't I?
Correct.
Now, when you received the Dodge Durango on December 14th and went to the BP station to fill it with gas, how much gas was in it when you filled it?
Before I filled it, it was a half a tank in it.
So you started with a half tank and you gave it back with a full tank.
Correct.
And using the 31 gallons that you had put in it, you were able to drive at what turned out to be a total of 648 miles.
which included the 50 miles that we had got off track.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
All right, do you have questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Palmer, first of all, what's your middle name?
Lewis, L-O-U-I-S.
When you completed this driving that you did for Mr. Gaskins, you used 31.887 gallons of gas. The whole thing comprised, we just saw, it took you 31 gallons of gas, that's correct, right?
Yes,
Okay. And you went 648 total miles.
correct.
Okay. And are you sure about that? Did you write it down? How did you remember how far you went?
Well, the mileage from the odometer was documented.
Okay. And do you have those documents with you?
I have. Actually, I wasn't writing it out. The attorney who was with me was writing it out. I was driving. I just gave him the information from the odometer.
So Mr. Gaskins wrote out how far you had gone between each one of these places?
Yes, but I had given it to him from the odometer, reading.
Do you have those documents that detail where each stop occurred?
Yes,
Okay. And where are those?
they were kept on a log.
Okay. Do you have that log?
No, I don't have, other than this sheet here I have here.
So the distances that we just saw, you have no idea if those are correct. You just assume that those are what Mr. Gaskins had written down?
He got them from me, I got them from the odometer. I was driving the vehicle.
I understand. So you're
At the
driving.
completion, I gave that mileage to him.
Okay. So you're driving. You drive from Bella Park Trail to Blackflower, and you turn to Mr. Gaskins and say, that was, according to this, 8 miles.
Correct?
Did you round up or down?
No,
Okay. And then he recorded down how far you had gone?
yes.
And that document where he had reported that, have you ever seen that?
Well, I have it here,
You have it there.
yes.
And
This document here is printed out, but I don't have the handwritten document.
You don't
Is that
have
what
the
you're
handwritten
asking?
document.
That's correct.
so if you had said, Mr. Gaskins, we just drove 19 miles, and he wrote down 90 miles, you would have no way of knowing if that was reflected accurately.
Unless I reviewed it.
Okay. And did you review it?
I only reviewed the finished product.
Okay. So you have no idea if he wrote down what you told him accurately.
I just have to assume that he wrote it correctly.
Okay. And you mentioned that you went 648 miles using 31.887 gallons of gas.
That along with what was in there already was a full tank, remember?
It was a full tank, and so you drove, and when you got low, you filled it back up with gas and reported how much gas that was, and then you drove some more and filled it back up after you finished the route, and that gave you this total of 31.887. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did you document how much gas you took each time, or was that Mr. Gaskins as well?
No, that was Mr. Gaskins did.
Mr. Gaskins did that as
Right.
well? Okay. So when you testified under oath to this jury that these are the distances that you went between each location, you're really testifying as to what you believe Mr. Gaskins reported.
And I believe that to be correct.
Okay. Are you aware of the miles per gallon that a 2007 Dodge Durango gets?
2007,
I mean, I'm sorry, a 2009 Dodge Durango?
27 miles per gallon.
It gets 27 miles per gallon. Your testimony under oath today is that a 2009 Dodge Durango gets 27 miles per gallon.
That's on the highway.
Okay.
14 in the city, I believe, or something like that.
14 in the city and 27 on the highway.
Yes.
Where did you get that number from?
I took that number from the manufacturer's guide. I thought I saw it in there.
You thought you saw it in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a copy of that manufacturer's guide?
I thought I had one here. I don't know if I still have it. No, I don't believe I have it in my file here.
Do you know what model of 2009 Dodge Durango you drove?
Do I know what model it was?
Yes, sir. The gas mileage depends on whether it's a 6-cylinder or 8-cylinder, or whether it's 4-wheel drive.
I had the manufacturer's guide, but I don't have it with me now, and I don't recall.
In fact, the fuel tank size of a 2009 Dodge Durango is 27 gallons. Is that correct?
Yes, according to what I've read.
Okay. Are you confusing the miles per gallon that it gets with the size of the fuel tank?
To be honest with you, I don't, no, I'm not. I don't believe so.
Okay. So you believe that a 2009 Dodge Durango gets 27 miles per gallon?
Only from what I've read. I've never owned one. I've just driven that particular one there.
Okay. And you believe it also gets 14 miles per gallon in the city?
From what I understand.
Okay. And I guess is the person that drove this route, wasn't it important for you to document the miles per gallon that this vehicle gets?
Well, I believe that's what we were doing. I drove it. As I reached each destination, I gave him the mileage that was indicated on the odometer.
Okay. And those notes you don't have?
I have the reproduction of those notes in writing.
Okay, but those are what Mr. Gaskins put together. You didn't have any hand in actually putting
No,
that
I'm
together.
doing the driving, no.
Okay. And you just testified that that's accurate under it?
I believe them to be accurate.
Okay. Along those lines, looking back at your travel log, do you have that in front of you?
Yes,
You took several trips to Kinston, North Carolina.
correct.
Why did you go to Kinston when all those purchases were in Raleigh?
I was following the information that was provided to us
Okay, so again, who'd you get that information from?
from the attorney, naturally.
Okay, from Mr. Gaskins?
Yes,
Did you ever talk to the defendant, Amanda Hayes?
I never met the lady.
Okay. And so Mr. Gaskins told you that you needed to go to Kinston, and then, so that's why you drove there.
Correct.
You testified yesterday about, I believe you might have called them rental properties.
Yes,
Do you have any information, any evidence that Grant Hayes or anyone in Grant Hayes' family owned those properties?
according to the tax information,
Okay.
you can pull that up on the internet.
Your Honor, can I approach?
Okay.
Sir, I hand you what's been marked as 587, a group of papers. Does this appear to be a printout of the tax records from the Lenoir County Tax Office?
I guess it would be. I haven't seen this before.
Okay. Well, you said you've been to that website. Have you looked up Grant and Amanda Hayes and Grant Hayes' parents to determine if they own these rental properties?
If I had looked on the tax records, which I've done in other matters,
Okay.
I would have found that.
Okay, so you haven't done it in this matter.
No,
But you just testified yesterday that these were rental properties owned by Grant Hayes' parents.
yes, because
But you have no independent knowledge of that.
other than what I've gotten from the attorney.
Let's talk about these movies. These writings that you read, the summaries of these movies, you wrote those, didn't you?
I did not.
Who wrote these?
I received them from the attorney.
Your Honor, may I approach a witness?
You may.
Do you have a copy of those writings up there that you read earlier?
Yes, sir. The two exhibits?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
110A and 111A?
Yes.
Sir, starting out with the Stepford Wives material, you testified under oath a second ago that Mr. Gaskins wrote this?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, that's entirely copied off of the Wikipedia page for the Stepford Wives, which is in front of you, the State's Exhibit 587, isn't it?
I mean, may I have that question again?
This, State's Exhibit 110A,
Right.
is a copy of, and look at this document, State's Exhibit 587. That's the Wikipedia page for the Stepford Wives movie, is that correct?
Yes, that's what it says here.
Okay, and if
And
you could
according
look,
to
if
you.
you compare largely the language is the same between State's Exhibit, Defendant's Exhibit 110A, which you read, and what's listed in here, is that correct?
I don't know. I haven't read this.
Okay, well, here, could you read the beginning of that paragraph starting Joanna becomes, could you read the first sentence?
Joanna becomes friends with Bobby Markowitz? Is
Yes.
that what you're talking about? Yes.
And right there, Joanna becomes friends with
Yes.
Bobby Markowitz.
Same.
This appears to be the same
Correct.
language, largely. Is that correct? Well, let's turn to the end of that writing.
Okay.
The last paragraph begins 6 months later and goes on.
Correct.
Paragraph before it begins, distraught over the loss of her husband, Claire explains that she created Stepford. Is that exactly the same as what you read?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The only difference between those two is that in the Wikipedia page, the word murdered is there, and in this thing that you read, killed is there. Is that correct?
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
So the word murdered has been replaced in that document.
Yes.
Turning to the talented Mr. Ripley, before you are State's Exhibits 588 and what should be 589. And State's Exhibit 588 is the Wikipedia page for the talented Mr. Ripley movie. Is that correct?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit 589 is the Wikipedia page for the talented Mr. Ripley book. Is
Yes.
that correct? And again, according to your information and what you just testified to, Mr. Gaskins wrote State's Exhibit 111A. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in fact, that also is largely copied from these two exhibits. And if you could compare them. For instance,
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
for instance, the first sentence of the material that you read, could you read that first sentence to the jury?
Tom Ripley is a young sociopath struggling to make a living in New York City by whatever means necessary, including a series of small-time confidence scams.
Now, if you could read the first sentence of State's Exhibit 589.
Tom Ripley is a young man struggling to make a living in New York City by whatever means necessary, including a series of small-time confidence scams. Same.
And so what's the difference between this, the Wikipedia page, and what you just read?
Well, that paragraph is the same paragraph I just
Okay.
read.
This one, the Wikipedia page, reads, Tom Ripley is a young man struggling. And that one, the one that you read to this jury, reads, Tom Ripley is a young sociopath. Isn't that correct?
Ah, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So the word sociopath has been added in to State's Exhibit 111A. Is that correct?
Yes, you're right.
Have one moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Your Honor, may I reapproach witness?
Sure.
This last paragraph in Defendant's Exhibit 111A, the Mr. Ripley one,
It's here.
the paragraph about Ripley has managed to lie and deceive everyone.
Yes.
If you go look through these two documents, that paragraph doesn't appear in either of those, does it?
No.
Mr. Palmer, aside from driving to these places that Mr. Gaskins told you and testifying to things that Mr. Gaskins told you, did you have any other further investigation in this case?
No, it was very limited. My role was very limited in this case.
Thank you, nothing further.
All right, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Zellinger asked you some questions about the highway mileage on the Dodge Durango versus the in-town mileage, and you indicated that you thought that the highway mileage was 27 miles per gallon.
27 miles per gallon.
If you will, look through if you can find your specifications, your manufacturer specifications for the Dodge Durango, and I'll ask you if the highway mileage is in fact 20 miles per gallon.
Objection to the leading.
Overall, if he can look and find it, do you have your specifications?
I don't believe I have that copy with me.
May I approach the witness? Your
All
Honor?
right.
Mr. Palmer, let me ask you, if you will, to examine what I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 40 and ask you if you recognize that.
Oh, yeah. This is a copy that I reviewed some time ago, 2009 Dodge Durango. The estimated mileage, is that what you're speaking of?
Yes, if you'll go over to the second page and refer to Dodge Durango, the six-cylinder Dodge Durango.
6-cylinder, okay.
What is the highway average mileage for a six-cylinder Dodge Durango, 2009 model?
I don't see it here.
Number in this
Oh,
column.
it's here. 14 City Highway 20,
Highway 20,
yes.
and the actual, the tank holds 27 gallons.
The tank holds 27
So,
gallons.
so the confusion here
Oh,
has
yes.
been the amount of gas that the vehicle will hold being 27 gallons versus the amount of gas that it uses on the highway and in the city.
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
And the 31 gallons of gas that you added to the vehicle in order to drive the route that you drove was based upon 20 miles per gallon average highway, 14 gallons average in town, correct?
yes,
And that 31 gallons got you 648 miles, didn't it?
correct.
Do you recall that while you were driving the Dodge Durango, that
Objection will lead.
Let me hear the question.
who was with you when you were driving the Dodge Durango?
You were with me.
And for some portion of the time was Mr. Tarleton, who was seated next to me with me?
Yes, I believe that's on the last day.
Do you recall that we were using the computer to complete the information that you provided to us?
Yes,
Do you recall that as you computed the mileage from one distance to the next, that you reported it to me?
I reported it to you, which, either one of the two of you, I'm not sure who was doing the recording. I'm doing the driving.
You doing the driving, you're telling us how many miles it is from spot to spot,
Correct,
and we're putting it into the computer.
correct.
Is that correct?
That's
That
correct.
was calculated?
Yes,
It wasn't calculated using notes and so forth, it was reported directly into
Mr.
the computer.
Mr. Gaskin, you have to ask the question,
I'm sorry.
please.
Was
Thank you.
it being recorded directly into the computer?
yes,
And the exhibit that you have seen and reviewed, the travel log, reflects the mileage that you reported that went into the computer.
yes.
Mr. Zellinger also asked you about the summaries of the movies. You recall those questions?
Yes,
Have you reviewed those summaries? You read them to the jury, the ones you read.
yes,
Do they accurately reflect what you recall seeing in the movies?
what I saw in the movies is consistent with what I read here.
Now, he asked you about some references to the summaries that were obtained from the Wikipedia internet site.
Yes,
The summaries that you have reviewed are more complete than the summaries that appear on Wikipedia.
Have you read the summaries on Wikipedia?
Well, yeah. Have you ever read the summaries on Wikipedia?
I have never read these, which he had shown me, I don't believe.
You've never read what Mr. Zellinger gave you.
I don't believe I read those.
But the summaries that you read were complete and accurate summaries of what you recalled from having watched the movie.
What I reviewed in the movies are basically consistent with what I've read from the notes you gave me.
Thank you, sir. Let me just ask you one other thing. Mr. Zellinger also talked to you about traveling to Kinston and taking photographs of the houses there.
Yes,
Were you relying on the report that had been provided by the Raleigh Police Department in locating those
correct.
properties?
Yes,
Thank you, sir. That's all.
Go ahead.
Briefly, Mr. Palmer, you just agree with some more things that Mr. Gaskins told you, is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that
You
again?
just agreed with more things that Mr. Gaskins told you?
Correct.
Okay. And one of those things was the complete report from the Raleigh Police Department. Is that accurate?
The complete report from the,
Is that what he just told you, that you relied on that report from the Raleigh Police Department?
regarding the properties in Kinston?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Do you have that in front of you?
No, I don't have it.
Do you know that that's an accurate report?
Only from what I've read from the documents that he had or that he got from the police department. I don't know for sure. I didn't know independent a check on those properties myself.
You mentioned the word independent. You're familiar with that accurate document?
The which document?
The report that you're claiming that you relied on
Yes.
to go to Kinston, to have any reason to go to Kinston. The sole thing that took you to Kinston was this comprehensive report. Is that correct?
The comprehensive report, yes.
And that's done by Accurate.
Oh, yes, okay, that one.
The first page of that report says in huge letters, important, data is entered poorly, processed incorrectly, and generally not free from defect.
That's correct. They're all
Any data supplied by the system must be independently verified.
correct.
And you didn't independently verify any of that.
No, I
In
rely,
fact, the tax records from 2011 show that none of those properties belong to Grant or Amanda Hayes or his parents.
I don't know anything about 2011.
Okay, and
All
that's
I-
when this crime occurred, correct?
Yes,
So whether a report shows something now could be completely different than what it shows in 2011.
information changes each and every day.
Sure, and this accurate report is the one that says that it has to be independently verified,
Yes, it does say that.
and you never did that.
No, that wasn't my function.
And lastly, you mentioned that the 31.887 gallons took you 648 miles, is that correct?
Yes,
And that's over 20 miles per gallon. Isn't that right?
I suspect so.
Okay. And so this Durango that's sat there for 4 years, did you also strike that? Did you at some point did you trail the U-Haul behind the Durango to simulate what happened on July 16th?
No, sir, I did not. As I told you before, I had no independent knowledge of the case primarily.
And that would grossly affect the gas mileage. Wouldn't it?
It could very well affect it.
And so this car that sat there for 4 days, or I guess 2 or 3 years, that was at this point almost 4 years old, somehow got better gas mileage than a new one would have in 2009.
I don't think I could speak to that, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned that y'all got lost for some 50 miles.
Yeah, a couple of days. Between the 2 days, we were off track.
Nothing further.
All right, anything else?
Have a good one,
All right.
Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Appreciate you being here. Thank you, sir. You may
Thank
stand
you.
down. The witness is excused. It's quarter after 11, folks. Before we take the morning break, don't discuss the matter among yourselves. Keep an open mind. Don't form or express any opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant or any matter in controversy. Be careful about your conduct. Come on back in about 15 minutes and we'll see what's next. Thank you. All right, we're in recess 15 minutes. Thank you.
Superior Court is in recess for 15 minutes.
Okay.
And it's slurring a little bit out there,
Okay.
because I was thinking they're gonna ask you when they come back
Ask me what?
about the weather.
Well, they'll know about it because they'll be able to look out the window, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Major Ashburn.
connected to that. Which one should I see?